And Maureen is our numbers lady. She interprets all those things, does a great job with that. And Tim, this man, he does all the trending, but this man is getting married in October. How awesome is that? Yes. Okay. Yes, the same thing happened in the first service. It was sort of a weak applause. Come on, let's do it. We're going to applause. Let's do it for him. And then Chris has been a great asset to us as the leadership team. He's been leading the team for a little over 2.5 years, something like that, and has done a great job. So they're going to try to present reality this morning as we look at a 6-month financial update. You should have gotten a handout on the way in. If you didn't, we have copies of that the ushers can pass out, and put your hand up and they'll get you one if you want one. But here we go, going through the numbers.
Good morning. First, we're going to take a look at our income and expenses at mid-year. You may remember back in January that the congregation approved a budget, and it was a budget with a deficit. We based the budget on reality. The income was based on weekly giving at year-end 2013, and the expenses in the budget were based on what we thought we would need for ministry in 2014. So it was based on reality, and it showed that we would run a deficit. And we are right where we budgeted to be as far as our income. We budgeted $316,998, and our actual is $316,718, so it was right to the budget. We also did budget for a deficit, and you can see the deficit there is negative $24,499.64. We did have some expenses that were bigger in the first half of the year. We had extra fuel oil costs. We had lots of snow removal costs, if you all remember. And we also had to send the payment in for Harvey Cedars, which was a big chunk of money that came in advance of some of the payments. So, like May was a very tough month for cash flow, and we did have to transfer funds from one of our CDs in the month of May. So the budget was a deficit, but the goal and the plan was to see our weekly giving increase. But as you'll see, our 2013 average giving continued into the first half of 2014.
Yeah, as Maureen said, we're right where we thought we would be budget-wise with the giving. And when you break down the giving into weekly totals, it's a little easier to manage and understand. So far this year, represented on the graph by the linear line, we're averaging $12,137 a week in giving. If that trend continues, we had the original weekly goal to cover the expenses budget of $13,900. So that goal of $12,000, what we're actually getting is slightly below our goal, which was exceeded above what we thought we would be getting. And with that goal would help to cover some of the deficit that we have. Now, 6 months in, we have an adjusted weekly goal of $15,682 per week that we would like to be able to give each week so that we can help to make up the deficit that we experienced in the first half of the year. The good news is in June was a very good month for us giving-wise. We increased our giving up to $14,000 a week per average, which is good, especially considering June is when you start to get into vacations and summer and being away for Sundays. So to see that is promising and hopefully a trend that will continue to improve as we go through the remaining months. And Chris will touch on some of the goals we have in the months to come.
So looking at goals are broken down into 2 categories. We have short-term and long-term goals. Our short-term goal was pretty short to the point, hit our weekly giving target. Right now, we're looking at hitting our weekly giving target, 13,910 that was out there to roll forward. We wouldn't get any worse than where we are. Now, the adjusted target of 15,600 that's out there is to offset the shortfall that we've had and maintain going forward as well. But what does it look like? It's a minimum increase on average of $1,800. So that gets us from our current state of $12,100 to that $13,910. So if we break that down on a weekly basis, it's $1,800. If we look at $1,800, it's on average $4.50 per attendee. We have an average of 400 attendees on a weekly basis. We look at that and we understand we're $4.50 per attendee, that might be difficult for larger families. For other families, that may be a little bit more easier to swallow. But what we look at is for those that may not be able to provide that $4.50, we look for others that maybe provide over and above that as well. But that's the overall average that we look at. We want to also look at continue to give generously. We've noticed and realized that giving is generous. So we want to continue that giving generously so we hit those weekly goals. The other thing we want to look at is regular giving. Giving more regularly, especially through the summer months. As Tim had mentioned, June was a great month. $14,000 a week on average is fantastic going through the summer. Typically we see that trend go the other way. It starts to go down with vacations. So we want to look at giving more regularly throughout the summer months as well. So we have July and August, so we're not as impacted as we had been in the past. One way to do that is to set up e-giving. E-giving is a great tool where it allows you, even if you're not here, you're still able to submit funds. And if you go onto our website, you'll see that icon down at the bottom of the website for e-giving. You can just log in and it'll walk you right through the steps. But it allows you for more of a regular giving as well, and just getting more consistent. The other side of that is, as well, is if you miss a week, just in the future weeks, look to make that up if you can, if at all possible. Last goal, prayer. Prayer is one of the things that everybody can do. Pray for the church finances, pray for the ministries. Pray for yourself and how God's calling you. God calls us each differently. So just seek the Lord in prayer and let Him lead you. As we go through the short-term goals, we're going to get into the long-term goals now. We look at long-term goals. Long-term is financial health. What does financial health look like? We want to get back to a place where we have some money in reserve. We started the year off fairly well. We had $30,000 in CDs. In addition to that, we had a fairly healthy general fund. But when we approved the budget, we realized that if giving remained where it was and the expense budget went the path that it was approved to be, that we would eat through our general fund and into the savings and deplete that, or potentially deplete that. So what we want to do long term is get the financial help. So that's $90,000 to $120,000 in reserves between our general fund and our savings. Essentially, what we're looking at there is 2 to 3 months. Why do we want to get the financial help? Well, there's many reasons we want to get financial help. For everybody here, right? We want to support the ministries. We want to get away from the month trying to figure out what we're going to do next month. We want to get more into the long term and how we can provide good, strong ministries going forward as well. Provide for those ministries. So not everybody has to worry with what's going to happen next month. Dave's going to talk through some great things that are happening within the community and within the church, and take us from there.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I think that these guys do a great job of giving you an update. Yeah, I get the privilege of following that up a little bit of a challenge, and but even before that, I've been hanging out in Philippians lately, and I wasn't sure why I was hanging out there so long, and then I came across these verses as I was back in it this last week again. And Philippians 4, Paul gives this challenge or encouragement. He ends the book by thanking the Philippian church for their generosity. He says, in the early days of your acquaintance with the gospel, what he's saying there is when they first came to know the Lord. All right, this church, when the Philippian church first came to know the Lord, and then Paul set out from them, from Macedonia, not one church shared with me in the matter of giving and receiving God's economics, except you only. See, what he's saying here, he ends the book of Philippians by saying, hey, I used you, Philippian church, I used you as an example. As I went to other churches, I used you as an example of generosity and as exception. They were exceptional in their generosity towards others. And he would use that use them in talking to others. They were the only church out of that Macedonian area that really excelled at generosity. The one thing that we can say as a team and as a staff, we can thank you. You guys really exhibit this in very much the same way. We see incredible generosity coming from you and coming from your partnership in the ministry. And we want to thank you. We see that generosity in so many different ways, whether it's getting involved in different service things or whether it's financially, whatever that might be. thank you. Really honestly, from the bottom of the heart, we really thank you for your partnership in the gospel. God is working through your efforts. This last few weeks ago, we wanted to say, I know as an older generation especially, they have given much, and sacrificed much for the direction of the church, and as we try to reach unchurched people, I know that people in particular have sacrificed much in the church body here. Well, about 4 weeks ago, we got this Facebook message from a new family, or a new person that came. Thoroughly enjoyed my first service today. I love when I leave with a positive message. I thank everyone today for fulfilling a void in me. I really feel like I found a church that I can grow in after all these years. See you soon. Yeah, absolutely. See, God is using that sacrifice. He is reaching new people, and it's exciting to be a part of that. We're seeing that. We also had another, this last week, we had a couple longer-term family that sent an email to the staff. And here it is, really cool, really encouraging. She was referencing the preaching team. David and Scott here are both doing a great job in fulfilling the teaching-preaching role. We appreciate how they're aware of what's going on in East Swamp and work together as they cover our preaching needs. See, we recognize, again, our preaching team is new. It's a change. But God's using it. Isn't that awesome? We're getting feedback that God is growing people through Dave and through Scott and their ministry to us. I appreciate them. And it's great to hear the body appreciate them as well. The final one, this is the killer. I love this one. Thumbs up. Who gets a thumbs up in the Penny Power? Come on. On Wednesday, my wife was reading the Penny Power, and she goes, "Did you see this?" I'm like, "Honest, I didn't write it. I did not submit it. Honestly, it wasn't me." I know you're thinking it, but so cool. So cool to see, like, God working. And that's exactly what I can say. You are, just like the Philippian church, I see the generosity of this body is awesome, and we thank you for that. Paul goes on, and he says, even when I was in Thessalonica, spell check there, missed that, you sent me aid more than once when I was in need. See, the Philippian church continued to be generous. It was an ongoing thing. And then, and that is sort of the call to action, is this continuing the generosity. But it's very interesting what Paul says here. Not that I, Paul, desire your gifts. What I desire is that more be credited to your account. Now that jumped, it hit me. I wasn't sure what to do with that at first. But what I see Paul saying there is there are eternal results or eternal rewards that come not only to your investment, not only to who it goes to. Paul certainly needed the gifts. But he had learned contentment, whether he had little or whether he had much. He needed those gifts for ministry, for impact, for sure. And that is one aspect of your giving, that it impacts people for eternity. But the bottom line he's saying here is that he desired that the Philippian church, that more would be credited to their eternal account. Think about that for a moment. It's not selfish to realize that when you join in God's economy, in His giving and receiving, He is honored and loves to be generous back to you as we are generous towards Him and His work. So cool. As we look forward as a church, we are pumped going into the fall and want to fully fund. We got Kid Check coming in for our children's ministry. Frank has been working on this. This will make our children's ministry much more secure and really looking to enhance that as we go into the fall. We also are having over 60 students and leaders going out to Harvey in the end of the month here. We have Free Fall coming up in September. We have our all these things. Ministry takes money. And I want you to know where your funds are going to. That's what they go to. They go to impact direct people, direct children. We have, we're ordering church-wide curriculum right now, whether it's children, student, but also in our life groups as we start a new season of life group ministry. See, your investment goes towards impacting many people, whether it's in this church, whether it's in the community, but it's not selfish. It also impacts you personally. There's a special joy that comes with joining God in His level of giving, and also a special impact to those around. Paul ends with these verses. Your gifts are a fragrant offering. No one likes to smell bad, right? Junior high Harvey. I'm sorry. Can't be that way. Your gifts are a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice, pleasing to God. Your gifts can make God smile. Ephesians 5:2. Paul uses the same words are used of Christ and his sacrifice. Christ's sacrifice on the cross is a fragrant offering, pleasing sacrifice. Isn't that amazing? That our giving, when we get involved in giving, we are joining Christ in his sacrifice to all people, to those in need. Really cool. And Paul ends by saying, and my God, very personal, my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus. I love it. God is so good. And what a privilege that he uses us in his work. And his promise is, as you give, if you've been given, we want giving regularly, we want to thank you. You have been a direct part of the ministry. You've been a player, and even in the game. Tim and I, we went to see that race, and we had full access pit passes. It's fun to be a spectator, but it's nothing like being on the line, being on the gate, being in the game. When you give, you are in the game. You are investing in what's happening, in these eternal results, in the lives of people that we're trying to impact, but also your own life. It's a new level of participation that is such a privilege that we as believers have the privilege of partnering with Christ when he allows us into that. So if you've been doing that, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, God is working. And it's a direct result of your generosity. If you've never participated in giving towards God's work and what he's doing, we would encourage you to try it. This is God's economics. He loves to give back to us. And when we give, he loves to give back and to be generous towards us as we follow his generosity going forward. So thanks again to this team. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us, whether it's us on staff or whether the team here, and really appreciate all their efforts. We're going to go to the Lord in prayer. As the ushers come forward, a few other quick things just to mention.